Drill sergeants have read it. What was the funniest thing a recruit said? We had a strict rule to write official documents with a blue pen. It is a NATO standard and has its excuses, but all in all, it's one of those things. I had checked about 200 lines of weapons checkouts and ins when at the bottom of the page it has 50 on one side of the page. There was one entry in black. As you would imagine, I found out who it was pretty quickly. Given the entry had his name and weapon number staring right at me. Now the military has this thing where you go through basic training for everything. I mean, if you are given a pair of speakers, you are mandated to read the safety and usage instructions and give a signature for it, so they can't be held liable to some degree. This absolute piece of twig and sap looks at me with the most uncanny look when I confronted him about it. After a bit of friendly banter in front of his whole room, I ask, "So what is your excuse for using black ink?" "Sir, I've yet to get the formal safety and usage training for the blue pen, sir." He rewrote all 100 entries in blue pen that evening after being the only soldier to get training to use a blue pen instead of a black one. But man, that was a special moment where all the muscles in my face were fighting not to laugh. Edit: thanks to you/addicted to games for asking about this. The reason he had to rewrite 100 is due to the system in place for keeping track of weapons and ammo. Can't say much, but there are certain ways to get info faster if you set it up in a certain way. But also because crossing out something was also a big no-no with weapons logs. So it screwed up our system to keep track of stuff and also made my commanding lose his brains when someone crossed something out. I'm not gonna get into the combination of black ink and crossing out with my CO. Last week of Coast Guard boot camp, we all went to retrieve our civilian bags from storage. Told to grab all valuables and put them in a plastic bag and present them to the company commander to be collected and locked in their office. Everyone comes out with the usual wallets and phones. CC starts walking and talking about how we'll get the bag of shinies back on Sunday for our off-base liberty. He stops mid-sentence as he gets to one recruit. Conversation goes like this. CC: Howard, why the fuck do you have an iron? Howard: Petty Officer James, Seaman Recruit Howard. My recruiter told me it was a smart to bring an iron to share with my company. The CC doesn't say a thing. Just turns on his heel, goes to his office and blasts Rob Zombie for 3 minutes, while we are still holding out our plastic bags. We had learned over the weeks that this is his method to prep us to get smoked. Comes back and tells Howard to put the damn iron away, and carries on with collecting the phones and wallets. We later learned that he did that so we couldn't hear his laughter and to compose himself. It was the one time we broke him. Think this answer might be backwards to your question, but when I was in Air Force field training we had a Cadet Scobie, pronounced with a long O. Naturally everyone called her Cadet Scooby, as in Scooby-Doo, which she did not appreciate. Apparently we weren't the first to come up with this joke. Anyways, Cadet Scooby was acting as flight commander that day and someone asked, "Cadet Scooby, may I ask a question?" Cadet Scooby then immediately corrected the slip of the tongue, "It's pronounced SCOBY." The drill sergeant happened to be standing next to me at this time and said under his breath, "Roo-row raggy." The few of us that could hear him let out a muffled laugh and then he turned to us and smiled. Still to this day one of the funniest you had to have been there moments, and Roo-row raggy is still something I laugh at. When I say down, you say we are. When I say up, you say weak-hearted. Down. We are. Up. Retarded. I legit had to turn and walk away for a minute. Not a D's, but doing my best to translate ranks etc. from Finnish military. I served as an instructor for new conscripts during the latter half of my own conscript service. We were testing how well the new conscripts had learned the ranks of our military. They would wait in line, and when it was their turn I'd show them a piece of paper with the symbol of a rank in it. They would address me properly, tell their name and say the rank. For example, Sir Corporal Sir, conscript last name, a captain. The rank depicted on the piece of paper I showed was corporal, which was also my rank and thus on my jacket, very visibly. The new conscript first addressed me Sir General sir. I raised an eyebrow and he quickly tried to fix his mistake, Sir Second General sir, a rank that would be right below general if it existed, which it does not. The conscript behind him made a chuckle, so he fixed his mistake again saying Sir Corporal sir, conscript last name. I don't remember the rank you are showing. I said you just said it. He went quiet in thought for a few seconds, then happily said a conscript. Not a D's. We had a specific response that we had to say if RT or any other asked us a question in BASIC. They would say something, or if you had to go over to them, you had to say trainee, last name, reports as ordered when you got there or before you could answer. A lot of trainees screwed it up and would say reporting instead of reports. One day some new kid in another flight, still in his civilian clothing, said he was reporting to his T, and when he got there RT stopped our flight so we could watch what happened. That guy stood there reporting the weather and telling the T what shapes he saw in the clouds because only fucking meteorologists do the reporting. I'll never forget watching some guy sit there and tell 52 other people what shapes he saw in the clouds at the top of his lungs. Context: in Army basic training, anything said to a drill sergeant needs to end with their title. Yes, drill sergeant. No, drill sergeant. So early into basic our drill sergeant was handing out rifles. He asks my battle buddy for his serial number. Battle buddy rattles it off. So the drill sergeant, not having heard his title given, asks him, who the fuck do you think you're speaking to? A drill sergeant? An asshole? A dickhead? My buddy, realizing he forgot the title and now fully flustered, goes to say apologies, drill sergeant, but instead says apologies, dickhead. Both their eyes got wide at the same time in totally different ways. The private realized he may not survive what comes next. The drill sergeant is giddy with excitement that a private just called him a dickhead to his face. Exercise ensued. Oh boy, not a marching NCO, Canadian Armed Forces, but I remember going to basic. They had us all single-filed into a classroom, and seated by name. So, of course, our marching NCO starts asking, why did you join? The first unlucky fellow doesn't address the MCPL's rank and just goes on talking, gets blasted. We go around the room and for the most part it's pretty good. Then Buddy's turn comes up, he makes the same mistake as the first guy. Before the MCPL can even start yelling, Buddy says him sorry. Master say chief. Yes, hello Master Chief. My MCPL just stared at him, lightly chuckled, then the whole room burst into laughter. Buddy was from then on nicknamed Master Chief. At basic I got the whole drill sergeant team laughing from a comment. Drill sergeant starts yelling at me in my face about God knows what, on and on. He is from the deep south and has a super strong Mississippi accent. I am an immigrant from South Africa, my accent sounds English or Australian to US people, only been in the USA for a few years and have been living in Oregon, and honestly I can only understand a bit of what he is saying. At the end he concludes with, do you understand the words coming out of my mouth, private? I replied, drill sergeant. No. I am really struggling with your accent, drill sergeant. There was silence for a bit, then they all started laughing. Marching the troops back to the barracks after lunch, I noticed a recruit with a white stain on his hip pocket. I halted the platoon and got in the recruit's face. Me, recruit, that white stain on your shirt better be because you are excited for this afternoon's training. Recruit, no sergeant, I am saving my snack for later. Me, what snack are you saving? Recruit, ice cream. Fort Sill, OK 2002, during my basic, D's is smoking us on the first day, playing Who Doesn't Want to Be Here? If you don't want to be here, I don't want you here. Just tell me and you can go home. We've been in front lean and rest for between 15 minutes, 2 years, give or take, when somebody raises their hand. D's was flustered for a second because I don't think anyone had ever actually been dumb enough to raise their hand. He goes and gets down in private's face and in screaming at him. Finally he says, why don't you want to be here? I'll never forget the response, Drill Sergeant, this is not what my recruiter led me to believe this would be like. Only time I saw the D's speechless. I ended up doing basic, OCS, and officer basic course with that guy. There was another Phil Ken-Sebin in the platoon, and the D's asks my one day if I would mind if he called my white Phil Ken-Sebin so he could tell us apart. I'm white, D's and other guy weren't. I think he wanted to see how I would react. That weekend we got our phone call and I asked my parents to address my next letter to white Phil Ken-Sebin. Next mail call, D's, who was really cool as days go, is just rattling off names and gets to my letter. You could almost hear his brain record scratch. Worth the push-ups. One of my buddies has some amazing stories from D's time. My favorite was about a pair of trainees walking down the sidewalk towards an officer. The one trainee, A, was carrying a large box with both hands, and the other, B, was walking to his right and had nothing in his hands. The officer was getting ready to return the salute he knew was incoming, but the two trainees were visibly freaking out. How could A salute with both hands occupied? B got the bright idea to salute with his right hand, appropriately, and to salute for his buddy with his left hand and a resounding "Good morning, sir." This really needs the visual, but picture a Guinea Force/Usain Bolt arm position. The drill sergeants were falling over each other to go tear them apart, stifling laughter the whole time. When I went through Air Force Basic, we had a list of things we needed to have memorized and would regularly be quizzed on. The name and rank of every person in our chain of command from us to the president, ranks and insignia, and a bunch of Air Force trivia, etc. At the end of the chow hall line was the snake pit, the table where all the drill instructors sat, and they would randomly stop trainees and ask them these questions. As I was passing the table, I overheard one drill instructor brag to another that a girl in her flight had every single answer memorized well before most people usually do. That flight was behind me in the chow hall. As I sat down, they stopped that recruit and one drill instructor started drilling her with these questions. She answers every one perfectly and quickly. After 20 or so questions, the DI asks who lives in a pineapple under the sea. The recruit paused for a minute and said, "Excuse me, sir?" The DI yelled at the top of his lungs, "WHO lives in a pineapple under the sea?" The poor girl is just frozen and all the other DIs shout SpongeBob SquarePants. They dismiss her and the DI asking the questions continues to shout the next several lines of the song. My brother did Army JROTC, then joined the Air Force. In Army JROTC at the time, all officers were "sir" no matter their gender. The Air Force, being a little more progressive, used "ma'am" for female officers. After taking maybe 2 steps off the bus on day 1 of basic, a female drill instructor asks him a question, in which he replies, "Yes, sir," which prompted her to yell, "Do I look like I have a dick?" Then made him drop and do various torturous PT exercises, loudly counting 1, "ma'am," 2, "ma'am," etc. As soon as she is done with him and he picks up his bags, a male instructor walks up and asks him a question, in which he loudly replies, "Yes, ma'am." Edit, the count was actually "ma'am, you're a ma'am not a sir, ma'am." 1. Edit 2, apparently his JROTC instructors were super old guys and clearly had this wrong, haha. Navy Basic back in early noughties. We had just come from Freedom Hall and we're finally going to the next for our first phone calls since we arrived. Our RDCs put on their most menacing faces and told us exactly how it would go and that no matter how tempting or how clever we thought we were not to touch the candy machines or we would be caught. Now it's my division and our brother division, so like 120 or so recruits. We get there and line up and just wait our turns for the phone booths. Everything seems to be going smooth and we're almost done when I notice one of the RDCs is just eyeballing this one guy and practically breathing down his neck. RDC bent down and in a quiet voice that naturally we all heard he says, "Were those M&Ms good B? You'd think this dude's soul flew out his body." His face turned red and just dropped. He was terrified and practically shaking. For the rest of the day the RDCs followed him around making comments about M&Ms. The next morning we wake up to go start PT and B is gone. No one says shit. We get to Freedom Hall and there is B in the RDC that caught him. B has been doing rifleman drills since 5 AM. He hasn't eaten and is ready to puke. He joins us for our next hour of PT. I don't think he ever looked at an M&M the same after that. Obligatory not a D's. We were on the grenade training range in groups of 3. This is where there are various stations where you and your group have to throw dummy grenades at things. When you're the one throwing, you were supposed to yell to your group, "Cover me while I throw my grenade." This one guy from the south with an accent to match yelled, "Cover me while I throw this here grenade," before he lobbed it. I had never seen the D's monitoring that station laugh so hard. I suffered from this, so I get to share. I was in an infantry basic training which was rather regimented and I have no concept of how others are/were. We weren't allowed to say Roger, who are, etc. It was yes/no drill sergeant. The dipshit next to me responded to a question, unironically, with "the private doesn't know. The private will educate himself about a week into the roughest portion." 12 years later I still have scars on my hand from low crawling up and down that fucking gravel hill. Another one was afraid of getting pink eye because of insert stupid shit he did. I jokingly said spray Lysol, it'll kill all germs. 10 minutes later we hear screaming from the bathroom. He actually did it. He cried. We spent 20 minutes washing his eyes out and afterwards he knocked on the drill sergeant's door to snitch on me. D's on duty called me into his office to just confirm that it actually happened and then smoked the fuck all 120-ish of us for an hour.
Definitely elevating for the 966. The ill suicidal liable to take titles and make vital signs but not like no cancer. Answer, there's no chance to advance to ya. Kuya got blazed through ya. The great super science applying pressure. I desecrate with double O's and bubble folds while I cut you, bro. I juggle flows that goes ballistic, reminiscent of exquisite cannibalistics and a sadistic doctor. My sick shit knocks ya improper. Got clockers like